Is this some kind of joke? Captain Mira stared at the holographic image floating above the round table, her silver-gray eyes narrowing with disbelief. You're telling me the Solari were the first true healers of the galaxy? The grand meeting hall buzzed with whispers as representatives from 20 different star systems exchanged surprised glances. All eyes focused on the small hologram showing a Solari healer, hands outstretched, surrounded by a soft golden light that seemed to dance around their slender form. Professor Lina, a respected scholar with crystal-like skin that reflected the room's light, adjusted his position nervously. There is no mistake, Captain. According to our recent discoveries, the Solari developed healing techniques independently on their home planet for thousands of years before they ever met another species. They practiced medicine and healing arts when other civilizations were still focused on warfare. More murmurs echoed through the chamber as the alien delegates processed this information. The concept seemed ridiculous. The Solari were the newest race admitted to the Galactic Alliance. They had barely mastered space travel when other species were already building artificial worlds and harnessing the power of stars. Captain Mira tried to keep her voice steady, though something about the hologram's serene expression made her uncomfortable. And what about their technology? Surely these healing practices didn't lead to significant advancements. Professor Lina gestured, and a new image appeared above the table, a Solari healing center from thousands of years ago. Simple wooden structures, gardens filled with medicinal plants, and practitioners working with their bare hands. Yet beneath this apparent simplicity, there were signs of sophisticated knowledge in the careful arrangement of healing spaces and tools. Actually, their society advanced precisely because of their healing focus, Lina explained. Every technological breakthrough came from their desire to ease suffering and extend life. They moved from using wild plants to creating medicines that could cure diseases in days, then to machines that could heal injuries instantly, all in just a few thousand cycles. Their medical knowledge advanced at an astonishing pace. If the Solari were so advanced, growled Drow, the Krex representative, his armored exoskeleton clicking as he shifted in his seat, why didn't they expand across the galaxy ages ago? Why were they stuck on their little world for so long? Professor Lina hesitated. They were isolated. By the time they reached the stars, most of us were already here. But... He paused, his voice dropping slightly. There is something else, an old concept from their culture. They call it hidden strength. A strange silence fell over the room, though none could explain why the phrase caused such unease. Captain Mira's fingers tapped nervously on the table. Explain this hidden strength. The professor looked around, gauging the audience before continuing. It's a belief the Solari carry, the idea that true power doesn't need to be displayed openly. They are a patient species. Their history shows a remarkable capacity for kindness that remains dormant until needed. They describe themselves as healers first, but their records show they can be formidable when protecting others. Let me understand this clearly. Captain Mira leaned forward, frustrated. They spent millennia developing healing methods, improved medicine, even created technology to save lives, yet they claim to be powerful? Lina nodded. Yes. Their records show a perfect balance. While they always prioritized healing, they also developed ways to defend themselves when necessary. Perhaps more importantly, they found ways to end conflicts through unique forms of negotiation and understanding. The Solari developed something we might call empathic diplomacy, the ability to truly understand the needs and perspectives of others. Drow sneered, his mandibles clicking loudly. So we're supposed to believe they're dangerous pacifists? Not pacifists exactly, the professor's voice lowered. It's something more nuanced. A balanced approach that other species don't practice, perhaps because they never needed to develop it. Until now, the Solari had no one to heal but themselves. At that, a new hologram appeared. It showed a modern Solari healer, wearing a simple white uniform with strange symbols embroidered along the sleeves, each one representing lives saved or healed, a tradition apparently maintained over centuries. Captain Mira studied the healer's face with growing concern. Why are we discussing this now? Professor Lina closed the hologram, leaving the chamber in uncomfortable silence. When he spoke again, his voice was grave. Because we've been watching them. We believed we could control their integration into the Galactic Alliance by limiting their access to certain worlds and technologies, by assigning them to minor medical roles. Myra's eyes widened. Are you suggesting they discovered our manipulation? Yes, Lina admitted. And now we believe they may respond. A low hum filled the room as the delegates absorbed the significance of this statement. The concept of a response from the peaceful Solari seemed inconceivable. Most galactic species settled disputes through trade agreements, formal debates, or legal arbitration. The idea of retaliation seemed almost primitive, yet the evidence suggested the Solari were more than capable of it. They would respond against us. Myra's voice revealed the first hint of uncertainty. She, like many others, had viewed the Solari as a minor species hardly worth the resources spent integrating them. The professor looked down at his notes. They are no longer confined to their home planet. Their ships may appear simple, but they are remarkably effective. Their healers are skilled in ways we never anticipated, and they show resilience unlike anything we've seen before. Captain Mira scoffed, trying to regain her composure. Resilient how? Lina activated one final image, recent footage from a disaster zone where Solari healers worked tirelessly. The camera showed them moving with perfect coordination amid chaos and destruction. They communicated through subtle gestures and expressions, working without break for days. One healer collapsed from exhaustion, only to be helped up by another before continuing their work uninterrupted. The council members watched, disturbed, as a Solari healer continued working despite being injured themselves, channeling their power to save others while ignoring their own pain. They seem to possess an unbreakable will to continue helping others, as if they draw strength from adversity rather than being defeated by it, Lina explained. Mira finally looked away. Why should we fear healers? She muttered, half to herself. Lina's voice became solemn. Because we misjudged them, Captain. We assumed they were simply latecomers to galactic society, but in reality, they have been developing their abilities far longer than most of our civilizations have existed. They understand pain, loss, and healing in ways we cannot comprehend. All of this is fundamental to their existence. Drow's harsh laugh cut through the tension. So they can heal injuries and endure hardship. They're still just organic beings limited by their physical forms. What can they possibly do against our fleets, our weapons, our worlds protected by the Alliance? The professor didn't answer directly, but his gaze remained steady. They may surprise us. For millennia, we have focused on technological advancement, military strategy, and economic dominance. But these Solari, they perfected the art of understanding life itself. They know how to preserve it, how to heal it, and yes, how to end it if necessary, in ways we abandoned or never discovered. The delegates sat in silence, each contemplating the uncomfortable truth before them. The Solari, the species they had considered naive and unimportant, had evolved from a history built on profound understanding of life and death. Are we preparing for conflict? Captain Mira asked, her voice barely audible. The professor paused reluctantly. It's not yet confirmed, but our observers have detected increased activity in Solari space. They've strengthened their planetary shields and appear to be mobilizing their fleet. Nothing openly aggressive, but their movements suggest preparation. Drow scoffed, his armored plates shifting with contempt. Let them prepare all they want. Their primitive technology, limited resources, and small ships are nothing compared to our battlecruisers. Let them fortify. It will only delay the inevitable. These, Professor Lina continued, ignoring Drow, are historical records of Solari development. Notice how each century their healing methods evolved and adapted. They faced illnesses beyond their medical knowledge but managed to transform these limitations into new discoveries. They learned to address the root causes of diseases, not just the symptoms. They made healing an art. A representative from the Etheri species, a tall being with translucent skin that revealed swirling patterns of light beneath, raised a question. But they have limitations, do they not? We have analyzed their biology. They are physically vulnerable, restricted by their forms. Their fleet is small, and they lack weapons. Lina nodded. Yes, they are physically limited, but they possess a particular kind of resolve. This concept may seem foreign to us, but they have conditioned themselves over centuries to overcome obstacles through understanding rather than force. They call it harmonious adaptation. While other species avoid challenging conditions, the Solari actively seek to understand them, even the most difficult situations. Captain Mira shifted uncomfortably. What are you suggesting? The professor's voice dropped to a serious tone. That for the Solari, physical limitation is not a barrier. They thrive by understanding the essence of any challenge. They have developed an instinct to overcome not by force, but through deep knowledge. Drow chuckled darkly. You're making them sound invincible. They still have weaknesses, don't they? The professor looked at him with an unreadable expression. Perhaps, but it's precisely their drive to understand that makes them unpredictable. They have a saying, the greatest weapon against suffering is a mind that comprehends its source. And from what we've gathered, they embody this principle completely. The room fell silent as the delegates processed this unsettling information. Captain Mira, trying to restore some authority, straightened her posture. What do you recommend, then? If they are as capable as you say, what course of action should the Alliance take? The professor considered carefully before answering. Isolation is no longer feasible. We must consider if negotiation could resolve their concerns. However, if the Solari's history tells us anything, they will not be easily convinced by empty words. They value authentic understanding and genuine action. Anything less may be perceived as deception, an invitation to resistance. Myra's hands gripped the edge of the table. The truth was undeniable, as much as she wanted to reject it. The Solari valued genuine connection and understanding. They seemed almost defiant of conventional power structures. Drow, still dismissive, laughed harshly. You're suggesting we appease them? That we should fear their small fleet and their healers? Professor Lina tilted his head, looking past Drow with quiet intensity. I am suggesting we consider the cost of underestimating them. We assumed they were just peaceful healers. We assumed they would accept our control. We assumed. He trailed off, letting the weight of their collective mistakes settle in the room. Another hologram activated, showing recent observations of Solari preparing their fleet. They worked with minimal protective equipment, exposing themselves to harsh conditions, training in environments that would quickly exhaust most other species. The Etheri representatives' inner lights dimmed with concern. Is this how they train? Yes, Lina replied. Not just their healers, but all their people. They call it preparation through understanding. The Solari have entire cultural traditions dedicated to understanding survival under extreme conditions. Their healers aren't chosen at birth. They emerge through years of training and deep empathic development. Drow shifted uneasily, unable to hide his discomfort. But why would they do this? Surely there are easier ways to train healers. The professor gave a small, resigned smile. They believe in a concept we abandoned long ago. To them, true understanding comes only through experience. Their history shows they have endured plagues, natural disasters, and conflicts, and they have always emerged with deeper knowledge and stronger resolve. Mira looked around the table. How do we proceed? We cannot simply wait and see what happens. The professor's gaze moved from one face to another. We must show them we are willing to negotiate honestly, to acknowledge their wisdom and offer genuine respect. Anything less risks creating the very conflict we fear. Captain Myra's grip on the table tightened. The idea of showing respect to the Solari seemed unnecessary, but the evidence was clear. The Solari had adapted, survived, and evolved under conditions that would have broken other species, and they had done so quietly, hidden from the Alliance's notice. Drow leaned back, crossing his arms defiantly. Let them come if they wish. I do not fear healers. They may have their so-called understanding, but against our weapons and fleets, they stand no chance. Mira, for the first time, wasn't so sure. She looked at the hologram, the images of Solari working, healing, adapting, and something in her chest tightened, a feeling she hadn't experienced in her long career. It was a quiet, nagging uncertainty that made her skin prickle. Professor Lina closed the holograms, leaving the council in dim light. The choice is yours, he said softly, but know this, if we treat the Solari as insignificant, as an inferior species, unworthy of respect, they will notice. They will remember. And history suggests they will not forgive easily. With that, he left the council chamber, his footsteps echoing as he disappeared down the corridor, leaving a room full of uneasy leaders to consider his warning. As Captain Mira glanced at her fellow council members, she could see doubt creeping into their expressions. They had misjudged the Solari, misunderstood their strength, and if they weren't careful, the Alliance might soon face a reckoning unlike any they had seen before. Mira couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in her bones since Professor Lina's warning. The rest of the council dismissed the concerns, each more eager than the next to downplay the Solari as a minor issue. Dral in particular had been vocal in his contempt, insisting the Alliance should teach the healers a lesson if they became too ambitious. But Mira had spent enough time in command to recognize the difference between arrogance and caution. Right now, the Alliance had too much of the former and not enough of the latter. Weeks passed, and Mira ordered discreet observations of Solari activity. Reports flooded in, Solari healers conducting intensive training in harsh environments, their ships moving with deliberate purpose, their communications secure and carefully managed. The Solari weren't simply organizing, they were preparing for something significant, something far beyond what the Alliance had anticipated. Dral was the first to dismiss these concerns. Let them try. Our fleet will neutralize them within hours. But Mira was no longer convinced. Have we sent any message? Attempted communication? She asked, her voice tenser than intended. The communications officer shook his head. We've sent standard Alliance greetings, but there's been no response. Dral growled impatiently. Fine. If they won't answer, we'll meet them with force. Wait, Mira ordered, her voice cutting through the clamor. This isn't a situation we can resolve by charging in blindly. If they're truly preparing for confrontation, we need a thoughtful approach. What approach could we possibly need against primitive vessels? Dral demanded. They may have ships, but they don't have the weapons to match ours. The council members nodded in agreement, but Mira felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Ignoring the warnings was no longer an option. The Solari, those bearers of hidden strength, had chosen now to reveal themselves. She turned to the tactical display, studying the position of the Solari fleet. They've arranged their vessels in a specific pattern, each group supporting the others. They're prepared for our standard formations, she muttered. They understand our tactics. The Solari approach was meticulous and controlled, unlike any the Alliance had encountered. Then, as if on cue, the Solari flagship began broadcasting. This is Leader Ilanis of the United Solari Fleet. Alliance, your treatment of our people as lesser beings ends today. We come not seeking conflict but equality. Stand down, and we will discuss terms. Dral laughed harshly. How dare they? Equals. They have no idea what power they're challenging. But Mira felt something unexpected, respect. Leader Ilanis's words had been delivered with restraint, despite the impressive positioning of the Solari fleet. Open a channel, Mira ordered, ignoring Dral's protests. This is Captain Mira of the Galactic Alliance. Leader Ilanis, you have entered Alliance space without permission. This action could be seen as provocative. Ilanis's voice remained calm. Provocative, Captain? You forced our people into isolation for generations, limited our development, and kept us confined. You monitored our activities, assigned us menial healing duties, and prevented our growth. Yet we persevered. We learned. And now we are here, not to fight, but to claim our rightful place in this galaxy. The council members shifted uncomfortably under Ilanis's direct words. Mira struggled to maintain a diplomatic tone. Your concerns are noted, Leader Ilanis. But understand your fleet is significantly outmatched. Do not mistake your preparation for invulnerability. Perhaps, Ilanis replied evenly, but history shows that the Solari don't need invulnerability. We only need understanding. You should have recognized that from the beginning. Dral's patience finally snapped. Enough of this, he roared. Activate weapons. We will show them their place. As Alliance ships surged forward, Mira felt a pang of regret. The Solari had offered peace, a path forward as equals, but the Council had chosen confrontation, blinded by centuries of dismissing the Solari as inferior. The first energy blast erupted in space, Alliance beams cutting through the darkness toward the Solari fleet. The Solari vessels moved with breathtaking coordination, flowing around the attacks with grace no one had anticipated. They responded with precisely targeted counterstrikes, focusing on weak points in the Alliance formation. It wasn't long before the Alliance fleet began to falter. Each strike from the Solari ships was calculated, each maneuver part of a carefully considered strategy. For every Alliance ship that fired, 2 Solari vessels responded with surgical precision, exploiting the Alliance's rigid tactics and reliance on overwhelming force. Mira watched in astonishment as the Alliance fleet, superior in firepower, was systematically disabled. The Solari fought as if each ship, each life, carried profound purpose. She had never seen anything like it, not just a collection of vessels, but beings who understood both healing and protection on a level that defied conventional military thinking. Finally, Dral's flagship exploded, targeted with perfect precision at its power core. The council chamber gasped as the fireball filled the screen. Mira felt a strange, hollow acceptance. The Solari had offered peace, and the Alliance had rejected it through arrogance. Taking a steadying breath, she activated her communication link to Leader Ilanis. Leader, you have made your point. The Solari's strength and resolve are undeniable. On behalf of the Alliance, I propose we end this conflict. There was a pause before Ilanis responded. We came here seeking equality, Captain Mira. Do you understand now what that means? Yes, Mira replied, finally seeing the truth. The Solari have earned their place among us. Let us begin anew, not as rulers and subjects, but as true allies who respect each other's strengths.